Fun. Just giving it a second. All right, I think we're live, everybody. Let me just double check here. Okay, yeah, that's great. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for joining us today. It's delighted to have everyone here with us. So there's been a lot of debate, controversy surrounding vaccines, a lot of polemics, a lot of very polarized dialogue, a lot of heated dialogue. So today we thought we'd sit down with two respected doctors and scientists to hear some slightly differing views about and perspectives about vaccines. So I think without further ado, I'll pass on to our great moderator here, Dr. Siti Munirah, who will introduce our speakers. Thanks, everyone. Have a great dialogue. Thank you.
Right, thanks very much, Nat. Okay, Assalamualaikum and good evening to our respected speakers for tonight and also our audience. Hopefully everybody's had dinner and hopefully maybe enjoying some dessert over our casual chat tonight, but hopefully beneficial and full of, hopefully we can dispel some myths, learn some new things, and maybe have some heated discussion about the very in topic at the moment about the vaccines that are being rolled out in Malaysia for COVID. Okay, so before we start, I'd like to introduce our respected speakers for tonight. So Dr. Jay Kumar is a respiratory physician now attached to the Kinta Medical Center in Ipoh. He was the MP for Sungai Siput from 2008 till 2018, and he's currently the chairperson of Parti Socialist Malaysia. Welcome, Dr. Jeyakumar, to our Power Platform, Project Wawasan Rakyat, and hopefully we'll learn something from you tonight, yes? And our second speaker, but not least, Dr. Khor Swee Kheng, who specializes in health systems, health policies, and global health, and also is the founder of Malaysian Health Coalition. Welcome, Dr. Khor. So tonight we're going to have a casual, hopefully, discussion. And what I'm going to do first is let Dr. Jay Kumar share his thoughts and views about the COVID vaccine that's being rolled out, and then followed by Dr. Khor. And then hopefully we'll continue with some questions from the floor or questions to each other, and we'll just have a nice discussion tonight about the COVID vaccine, if that's okay. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Jeyakumar to the floor and for you to share with us about your thoughts about this COVID vaccine. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Munirah, and thank you to Power for inviting me for this discussion session. Actually, I think I'm invited because of an article I wrote in December regarding the vaccines, where basically I cautioned regarding some of the newer vaccines. You know, I was a bit worried regarding the RNA and the adenovirus vaccines. And if you look at vaccines, basically vaccines create immunity in the body against particular pathogens. And they do that by presenting proteins, the proteins of the pathogen, the virus or the bacteria, to the body. Normally that's been done by getting the virus, inactivating it, and injecting the dead virus into the person, so the body would recognize the dead virus. Or in some cases, they actually use the toxin, like in tetanus. They get the toxin, denature the toxin, and then inject it, but still the protein is recognized by the body. So when the real virus or the real bacteria or the real toxin goes in, the body already has got antibodies to fight it. So those are the traditional vaccines. But the new ones that now we're seeing with COVID is where instead of injecting the protein, what they're doing is they're injecting the code for the protein. Either like in the Pfizer one, they're injecting the RNA, put into a capsule, a fat capsule and inject it in. In the case of the AstraZeneca one, they are injecting a DNA code that codes for the spike protein of COVID. So in both cases, these vaccines go into our cells, and then they instruct our ribosomes in our own cells to make the spike protein. And when this spike protein is made by our cells, it comes out of the cell into the bloodstream, recognized by our immune system, which then produces the antibodies against it. So that's how it works. So that's the difference between the vaccines, you know. Can I have the first slide? I'll just show you this slide. Okay, this is the RNA vaccine. So it comes in that phospholipid capsule. The blue strip inside the capsule is the RNA. So once it goes into our cell, that green and blue contraption there is actually supposed to be a ribosome. It reads the code of the RNA and produces that particular spike protein that looks like a top. And that comes out of the cell into the tissue fluids, into the blood, where it's recognized by the white blood cells that this is a foreign substance, and then they produce the antibodies to fight it. So this is how it works. In the previous older vaccines, the traditional vaccines, this is not done. It's not the protein itself is injected into our body. It's not here. It's the protein is made by body cells. Now the thing with this is, when you have certain cells in your body making these proteins, foreign proteins, they also will elicit an immune response. I mean, the body will, the white cells will say, hey, this particular cell is the one where the enemy is coming from. So these cells will come under attack, you know, and a number of these cells will be killed, damaged and killed by the body. In a way, it makes the vaccine better, you know, because instead of just reacting to proteins, to antigens in the blood, the body is also reacting to cells producing this enemy, you know. So they also have what they call cell-mediated immunity. So I would actually expect these new vaccines to be maybe more efficacious, you know, more effective, more stronger protection, because you have humoral immunity as well as you have cell-mediated immunity, right? And so in terms of efficacy, it'll be good. Now, my concern in my article, which I wrote, was I'm saying that if you are getting this vaccine into millions of people and encouraging the immune system of those people to attack some of its own cells, may it in some cases precipitate autoimmune diseases, you know, things like rheumatoid arthritis, for example, you know, where the body itself attacks its own tissues. So here, if you do this on a population scale, would we in 6 months down the line or a year down the line see higher incidences of autoimmune diseases, in a way sparked off by this vaccination program? So that was my question, my doubt, and actually something that you cannot disprove. I cannot say it will happen for sure, just that it is a possibility. It's based on the science of it, on how it works, how the vaccine works. And I was suggesting in my paper that since it can neither be proven or disproven, or, you know, so that maybe we should be a little bit more careful and not rely on these kinds of vaccines that rely on our body producing the virus protein, but go to the older vaccines, the traditional vaccines. Can I have the second slide, please?
Dr. Jeyakumar.
Yeah.
Just in the interest of time, I mean, that's been really interesting that you've, explained that first slide to us. But we're, if you don't mind, I'm just going to switch over and then we're going to come back to you in a bit, if that's all right.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. So thank you for your explanation about and your concerns about this new vaccine that's rolling out. So we're in the second 10 minutes, I'm just going to allow Dr. Khor to share his views about the COVID vaccine, and then we'll try and incorporate your slides later on in the talk as well, if that's okay. Thanks a lot, Dr. Jay Kumar. Over to you, Dr. Khor.
Munirah, it is very, very kind of you, but may I cede the next 5 minutes back to Dr. Jeyakumar for him to finish his presentation, if that's okay, so that he can complete his thoughts? Thank you. I yield my time. Dr. Kumar, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Khor. Okay, Dr. Jeyakumar.
So I'm back. Okay, let's have this. Okay, now this one. Okay, if you look on the top, the blue, those are the new vaccines. So one is the RNA vaccine, and there are two now. There's Pfizer and Moderna, and I think the others as well coming up. And then you have the adenovirus vector vaccine, where it's the Oxford AstraZeneca, and India is coming out of the same thing called Covishield. And so there's a Russian one, Sputnik, and it's Johnson & Johnson. So these are the modern vaccines that are giving the genetic code to produce the viral protein. Below, in the gray box, you can see inactivated vaccines, like the one by Sinopharm. It's already being rolled out in several countries. The one called CoronaVac by another Chinese company, Sinovac. There's also a co-vaccine that's from India, Bharat Biotech. There are also other countries which are producing, other companies producing just a spike protein. They are producing the spike protein in the lab, like you have Innovax, and that's by China, Xiamen. Novovac, I think, is from America. There's another one, Nanocovac, from Vietnam. And then there's another one in Cuba, they're producing the viral antigen, something like inactivated virus, but they just take out parts of the virus and they combine it with the adjuvant. And that's called Soberana 2 in Cuba. These are the different vaccines we have. And so what I was suggesting is we use some of the vaccines in the second panel, in the gray panel, because all these do not involve our ribosomes, our cells, in the production of the antigen. It's okay. So I'll stop here and then let Dr. Khor.
Thank you, Dr. Jay Kumar, for that. Thanks very much. Okay, Dr. Khor, over to you. Would you like to share your views on the vaccine from your side of things? Thank you.
Of course, happy to do that, Munirah. Munirah, is it at all possible that I can share my screen?
Of course, is.
Thank you, Nat.
If admin can allow screen sharing, please. Thank you. Okay.
So, sorry, everyone. I thought just to share a very quick one. I'll spend maybe 10 minutes, and I'll be precise and on time. 10 minutes just talking about 3 topics, and some parts of it will be, I guess, directly addressing what are some of Dr. Kumar's concerns, and I hope that to have the dialogue as well. The 3 topics I want to talk about are, firstly, on blue on the left of the screen, is the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, the Pfizer specifically mRNA vaccine that we have right now in Malaysia and already injected to our Prime Minister this afternoon. Is it safe and effective? Secondly, I will then talk about what is the balance between benefit and risk. And thirdly, what are the lessons from around the world as we look at the vaccination program for 213 million people who have received the vaccine around the world, and we'll look at some lessons over there. Let's begin with the box on the left of the screen, in blue. Is the vaccine safe and effective? And I'll answer in a few ways. Firstly, yes, it is safe. It is safe in the short term because of its excellent safety profile, not only in the clinical trial, but also in real life. I can share one report of about 18 million recipients of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine. And this was published by the Journal of the American Medical Association just about, I think, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. In 18 million recipients, that's 18 million recipients, there have been no deaths. There are the usual side effects, injection site pain, some fevers, and so on. And I think Dr. Jeyakumar will agree that these side effects are actually a good thing because they're your immune system responding to the vaccine. So in general terms, it means that your immune system is doing well. So again, 18 million people, no deaths, and 66 anaphylaxis reactions. What is anaphylaxis? Anaphylaxis is a technical term that means severe allergic reaction. And that happened in 66 recipients out of 18 million recipients, and that's 0.0004%. None of this anaphylaxis happened later, meaning all of them happened within the first 30 minutes, and none of them caused any death. Now, that's the short-term safety profile, 18 million of them in America. Of course, there's a question here about long-term, and I think Dr. Kumar has mentioned this as well. We don't know what's going to happen in the long term. That is true, because this is a fact of life that will not be able to predict the future. So I might say quite philosophically, what is long-term? Is it 10 years, or is it 5, or is it 3, or is it 1? Whatever definition we provide to say long-term, we must then answer the question, what do we do with the pandemic today, right now? when there are at the moment 2.5 million people who have died from COVID and 112 million cases of COVID today. This is in the first year of COVID. So any long-term questions, which I appreciate, right? And I think are theoretically very important, must also be balanced with the short-term urgency of 2.5 million people dying from COVID already in the first year and 112 million infections only in the first year. So I will tell you right now that in the short term, the vaccine is safe. And in the long term, given the theory of the mRNA breaking down and not forming a long-term residence, shall we say, in the cells, it shows that there is a strong possibility that the vaccine will also be safe in the long term. I spent a lot of time on the safety because this is what everybody is curious and very passionate about. Let me move on about effectiveness. Not only in the clinical trials, right? The mRNA, we're looking at a 90-something% efficiency. Pfizer's 90-95%, including in real life, not just in clinical trials. Moderna is also 90-95%, including in real life as well. And we're talking over here in terms of the effectiveness, not only in the antibodies, but also in real life, 30-90% reduction in new cases, 30-90% reduction in severe disease, and 30-90% reduction in hospital admissions in the United Kingdom, the United States, and also Israel. Lots of data is coming in right now. We've only had 2 months of vaccinations. It's a bit early to say whether or not this will be carrying forward in the long term. But in the short term, the effectiveness data is very encouraging, with results showing that even after 1 dose of the Pfizer vaccine, 57% of the people are already protected against COVID. This is very encouraging. Again, 2.5 million people have died. 112 million cases of COVID. We need a solution that can also partially help us today. Thirdly, I would like to move on in the course of vaccine safety and effectiveness by talking about this idea of causality and coincidence. Causality means the vaccine, caused a problem. Repeat, the vaccine caused the problem beyond reasonable doubt, and we know that the vaccine caused the problem. But I put it to everyone that coincidence can also happen, and we must be mindful of this in the coming period. Let me zoom into Malaysia. In Malaysia, without the vaccine, again, no COVID vaccine, people go to hospitals and receive treatment, and yet 476 people die every day in Malaysia. That number is 476 people every day die in Malaysia without the COVID vaccine and with medical treatment. So even without the vaccine, if I look at the slides over here, X number of people every day will be diagnosed with diabetes. They will have heart attacks. They will have strokes. But this is coincidence. We cannot say that just because one person has passed away 3 days after receiving COVID vaccine, that it's automatically the result of the COVID vaccine. What I'm saying is there could be coincidence at play because every day, 476 Malaysians die. Now, I want to reassure everyone who's listening in by saying that there will be an adverse event reporting system, meaning every time there's an adverse event, the Malaysian government and every government around the world, frankly, would collect the data and we will investigate. I know because I did this pharmacovigilance activities for a drug company when I was based in Singapore. And I would do the adverse event reporting, and we would investigate this with the doctor, and we will make sure that if there's any problems with it, we will recall the medicine. And generally speaking, there have been medicine recalls. And if there is a strong safety signal, this is a technical term, then we will recall the drug and we will try to make sure everybody is safe. When I say we here, I mean the government. I'm actually an independent consultant. I do not represent the government. Ladies and gentlemen, what I've done for you is to look at the safety and effectiveness of the vaccines. I've shown you how it is safe, given real-world evidence. Real-world evidence, secondly, tells you that it is effective. And thirdly, we're trying to preempt the possibility that there will be a coincidence, that just because there has been one death 6 days after the vaccination, we will investigate the reason why, but it doesn't automatically mean that the vaccine has caused that death, because coincidence could happen. Ladies and gentlemen, let me spend 1 or 2 minutes each on the balance of benefit and risk. I've stated repeatedly in the box in orange in the middle that we've had 2.5 million deaths of COVID. Okay, that number is 2.48 million deaths, right? And 112 million cases. There's this thing about new technology and old technology. So I'll answer in two ways. One is philosophical, the other is technical. The philosophical way is when we discovered the smallpox vaccine in the 1850s and deployed it, mass vaccination programs in the 1960s, we did not have long-term data as well. But yet we deployed it, and smallpox is the only disease that human beings have been able to eradicate. And I put it to you that the polio vaccine, the HPV or the human papillomavirus vaccine, or the Bacillus calmette-guerin or the BCG vaccine for tuberculosis, at some point did not have long-term data, and yet we plowed ahead. And we've stopped polio, we are stopping HPV, and we are stopping tuberculosis by and large. That's the philosophical side of things, that when you look at history, these things have actually emerged organically over time. Now, the mRNA science works too, because the science is customizable. We have actually been having mRNA research for the last 10 or 15 years or so. We've not had an mRNA vaccine or a medicine, this is true, but that's also because this technology has been relatively untested. And with COVID, a lot of money, a lot of public priority, a lot of political pressure for us to research a lot and very quickly in COVID. And that's how the mRNA science works. So the question thirdly, is it the speed of the discovery of the COVID vaccine, is it too fast? But maybe it's actually that the other vaccines were too slow, because there's just no public priority to look at tuberculosis. It doesn't affect the rich countries. But whenever a vaccine like this one affects a virus affects the whole world, there is increased public pressure. So COVID vaccines could actually be fast, not that it is fast, but that other vaccines were slow. Finally, if I can say here, the question of should we take the vaccine is about not only the risk of vaccines, but frankly also the risk of COVID-19 at the same time as the risk of not taking the vaccine. I can share with you some quick lessons around the world. The vaccine confidence is important. Logistics and delivery are important. We don't yet know how to measure success. Number 4, we are not in Malaysia going for the single dose strategy like in the UK. We don't have a extended interval between doses. For example, if Pfizer says every 3 weeks you need to have a dose, we're not saying that you can extend it to 4 months. We're saying that we will give you the dose within 3 weeks. And finally, can we mix and match vaccines? I will end with a graph over here. This graph shows the daily confirmed COVID cases per million people around the world. Now, this is it starts in March 2020. It ends around the 23rd of February, just a few days ago. It's coming from our world in data. You can see a sharp peak over here. This is due to winter, and a sharp drop. Now, I will say very carefully that a small and partial explanation for that drop is due to the vaccination program that has been rolled out in the UK, US, Germany, and Canada, which are the 4 countries whose graphs are being mentioned over here. And the majority of these vaccines that have been deployed are either Pfizer, Moderna, or AstraZeneca. Now, I'm not saying that just because we've got these vaccines that the cases have dropped, but I will say that the vaccines have contributed, large or small, I don't know, and it's probably difficult to make that say claim, but I will say quite clearly and reasonably so that these vaccines have contributed to the drop in the number of cases recently. Let me pause here at 11 minutes and 20 seconds. Munirah, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khor, for that timely talk about COVID and the science behind it and the data that we have to date. Okay, very interesting points from both sides of our speakers. Maybe I'd like to open the floor now. Dr. Jaya or Dr. Khor, do you have any input that you'd like to respond to each other's points that have been presented now? I mean, lots of interesting points that I can think of and lots of questions still, which I definitely have. But yeah, Dr. Jeyakumar, anything from your side as a response to Dr. Khor's slides?
Okay, I agree with a few of the things that Dr. Khor said. I mean, it has shown that the vaccine is quite effective. The rates in Israel, the rates among the healthcare workers in the UK, the rate among the older population in the UK, all that has come down, the vaccinated population. So it definitely Can you hear me? It shows it's effective in controlling the cases and hospitalizations and even deaths. So that's not an issue. And the issue regarding side effects, yeah, I think it's not, so far what we can see is apart from the anaphylaxis, there are not many serious side effects as far as what you can see. But I think, Dr. Khor was mixing up just the mRNA vaccine with all vaccines, One other option is people can say, I'm not too happy with mRNA vaccine, I'll take the other vaccine. Please give me the inactivated vaccine. It's not like saying that if you don't take mRNA, there's nothing that can be done. What do you do for the next 1 year? If people are dying, yeah, we know people are dying. So the issue is not taking the vaccine. It's a question of, can we have a choice? Can people have a choice for the other vaccine as well? So I think that is the issue. And also, I think, what we got to see now is that there is in our population a great degree of mistrust in the authorities. They, especially in the West, in America, they feel that people in power are taking them for a ride, people in the power are ripping them off, So I think for us to come out and say, hey, don't worry, it's very safe, don't worry, when we do not know, we should say, okay, short term, what we can see, people are dropping dead. Yeah, short term, there's no problem, except for anaphylaxis, but there's no problem. Long term, we don't know. There's these doubts. We cannot be sure. I think that's the way it should go. We should be honest. Not saying that I'm a doctor, I'm a specialist, so I'm saying, don't worry, it's safe, take it, And you can say, look, there's also, Sinovac, the Sinopharm, there's the Indian vaccine. If you want, you can take that. We don't think it's as effective. It may not be as effective. It's only about 70% efficacy compared to the 75% in RNA, but you can take that. And the other thing I think we can tell people is, I'll tell health workers, go do your antibody screen. Because the study they did in Singapore of migrant workers, they found that out of the migrant workers who were seropositive for COVID antibodies, only 20% of them were ever diagnosed as having COVID. 80% of them had COVID infections and had antibodies to COVID without any symptoms. So it could be possible that some of our healthcare workers, some of our migrant workers, some of the people working in, say, in KL, Klang, and all that, may already have antibodies. In that case, maybe the vaccine is not really quite necessary for them. So these are things we can. So I think we should level with the people. I'm not saying I am definitely sure that this RNA vaccine or the adeno vaccine is going to cause a negative effect. I do not know. But at the same time, I don't think I want to tell people I am confident there's no effect, because I'm not. I'm not confident. I'm not confident. And I think we should be honest and treat our people as adults and let them make the decision. If they feel, look, this is the only vaccine available now for the next 1 month, you don't have Sinovac. I have an old parent at home. I'm a healthcare worker. I better get covered. That's fine. That's your decision, But to say, don't worry, there's no long-term effect, I think that's not being honest, and that's not good in the long term of building trust between the healthcare system and the authorities and the public.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jay Kumar.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So it sounds like, if I'm getting this right, is that you're not anti-vaccine, yeah? You are concerned, you have concerns about the new type of mRNA vaccine, and you feel that people should be given the choice if they wanted a vaccine, which vaccine they want. Just a question there. Is there any that you are particularly prone to? I mean, say if the alternative, what would you go for? If you don't mind answering that question, which would you be more inclined to?
Well, I have no shares in any of the companies. No, I think any of the, what I showed you earlier, the gray section, either inactivated vaccine or the vaccine where they produce just produce the protein in a lab and give it to us, any of that will be okay. I mean, but see, the thing is, just because it's inactivated doesn't mean it's safe by that. I mean, are they sure they've inactivated properly? Are there still some live COVID bugs there? What are the chemicals they use to inactivate? Has it been washed out? So I think you need to, the National Vaccine Safety Body has got to look into all that. Just because it's using traditional technology doesn't mean automatically it's safe. I mean, you've got to look at it. But I would take any inactivated vaccine that the government looks at and says it's safe. I'll take it.
Okay.
And I'll urge people to take that vaccine. Take vaccine of one sort or the other. If you're uncomfortable with the RNA vaccine, take the other one.
Okay.
And I think Sinovac is coming in next month.
Okay.
So I would say take the vaccine. It's important for the country to get this COVID under control.
Thank you, Dr. Jay Kumar, on that input. Okay, over to you, Dr. Khor. I think you're maybe burning to reply to that.
Well, Munirah, not so much burning, but I do not agree with many of the things that Dr. Kumar has said, unfortunately, Dr. Kumar. If I can share a few thoughts, and firstly, is the issue of long-term safety. And secondly, is the issue of quality control. And the third issue is of choice. The issue of antibodies, I agree with you. We absolutely need antibody tests, but we do not yet today have a bedside ELISA or ELISA antibody test that can be deployed cheaply and widely to be used before and after the vaccination. So I think that's a very academic point. I would love an antibody test as well. I just don't think that one is on the horizon, cheap enough and easily deployable. So I'll concentrate on 3 points, if I may. The first one is about long-term safety. The second one is about quality control. And the third one is about choice. About long-term safety, Dr. Kumar and everyone else, I don't think there's anyone who is trying to assure us that the vaccine is safe in the long term. I would never say that. I don't think anybody will ever say that. I don't think anybody dares to say that, to give you the assurance that the vaccine is safe in the long term. The best we can say is we're not certain. And we must also then make the consideration that we're not certain, but the benefits today, based on the best available evidence, shows that it's probably better to take the vaccine than not to take the vaccine. This is a pretty widely accepted position. And I don't think any scientist would ever say, we want to assure you of the long-term safety of the vaccine. I think that would be dishonest and disingenuous. And Dr. Kumar, I'm on your side. If there's ever anybody who would ever say anything like that, I would disagree strongly with that person as well. However, the lack of long-term safety data would still mean that we have to consider today, right now, the best available evidence that we have, and we still make that decision in terms of a trade-off, the benefits of taking the vaccine versus not taking the vaccine. And I'm sure this is something that you and I can agree with. The second thing I'll talk about is about quality control and about trust. You mentioned that you will take the inactivated vaccine, which is great. And I think in principle, people should be given choice, and I'll come to choice in a second. However, we don't have choice at the moment. So the elements of coercion and so on and so forth might come in, right? But let me set that aside for a second. I want to trust our National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency. Not only do I want to trust the NPRA, I trust the NPRA, full stop. If they tell me that the vaccine from whichever company, is it, be it Chinese or Russian or made in India or made in America or made in Belgium, if NPRA tells me that the vaccine is safe, I will take it. I will take it because these are a group of very senior professionals who are trained to do the risk assessments necessary to approve the vaccine. Not only that, they would ensure that the manufacturers adhere to good manufacturing practice, GMP, good distribution practice, and GDP as well. I mean, is there a possibility that there's some factory somewhere that doesn't follow good manufacturing practice? Yeah, of course. Is there a possibility that one batch in a million batches of the vaccine will not be inactivated properly or using the wrong reagents or the wrong diluents? Yes, I think that's a theoretical possibility as well. But I believe in our colleagues in the NPRA, and also the general certifications of a good manufacturing practice as well, to probably imply that there is a possibility of a danger in any of the vaccines, and therefore we shouldn't take them, I think would be a bit challenging. So that's my thoughts about quality control. Allow me to move on to the final point, Dr. Kumar, which is a very important point, the point about choice. I would love, in principle, to give people choice, but I would say that this is not possible and perhaps not desirable as well. It is not possible because today, as of right now, the only vaccine that is approved in Malaysia is the Pfizer-BioNTech one. And I also own no stocks, no conflicts of interest, and I openly declare this, no conflicts of interest or stocks in any companies whatsoever in the world, in any industry, any country, any stock exchange. The only vaccine that is approved in Malaysia right now today is Pfizer-BioNTech. And to tell somebody that just because the raw ingredients for the Sinovac vaccine will arrive on the 27th of February without guarantee of NPRA approval is to say that please believe that something will be approved in the future and then you take that vaccine. And this is not something I think that we should mislead people with. as a fact, the only vaccine available right now is Pfizer BioNTech. I'm not saying that we should chorus. I think the government has been very clear that this is going to be an entirely voluntary activity. We encourage you to do so. Even the Majlis Muzakarah has come in to say that the vaccine is both harus and wajib. And I think choice is a practical impossibility at the moment, also because there are global supply constraints. But let's imagine a scenario 6 months or 1 year from now, where we have 6 vaccines from 6 companies and 6 countries approved for use in Malaysia. Should we give people a choice? Then yes, we can cross that bridge when we get to it. And once we get supplies in order, NPRA approvals in order, we have 6 vaccines approved with adequate supplies in Malaysia. Can we provide people vaccines and choice? Yeah, perhaps. I can see the good because you're allowing people to make an informed decision and so on, but there is one possible hiccup or the disadvantage or unintended consequence. When you provide choice, people often don't make decisions based on rational evidence and science. They often make decisions based on, oh, my neighbor has vaccine A, I should get vaccine A too. Or I see this famous influencer on social media getting vaccine B, I should get vaccine B too. Or I will not take vaccines from country C or D or E, whatever, because I don't trust that country, or because one time I went traveling to that country and they treated me poorly. People make emotional decisions. Now, this is not me saying that we must tell them what to take, but I think we should be aware of the unintended consequences as well. Those are the 3 things I wanted to say, perhaps in partial response, Dr. Kumar, with very deep respect to you. Firstly, the idea of long-term safety, and nobody ever says that it will be long-term safety. We do want people to make the decision, say, based on the best available evidence right now, and then quality control, and then finally about choice. Munirah, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khor. I think this discussion is really important, despite our speakers maybe having opposite views, differing views. But I think this is what's being reflected by the concerns of the nation. Really, this is what people are thinking about, their concerns, their dilemmas, and I'm hoping that we can dissect some of these issues tonight. Now, I do have some questions from the floor, from our Facebook Project Wawasan Rakyat, from Chan Su Chong. So he had 3 questions here. How would you rate Malaysia's vaccination plan and timeline? Are we okay in terms of speed? Number 2, what are the potential hiccups to Malaysia's vaccination plan implementation-wise? And number 3, does it really matter which vaccine someone takes? Is it more important to just have a vaccine rather than, should I take Pfizer or AstraZeneca or Sinovac and all that? I mean, does it really matter? Or would the benefits of having any vaccine be more important than which vaccine you take? Okay, I will, anybody would like to answer any of those questions? Feel free. Dr. Jay Kumar, would you like to answer any of those 3 questions?
Okay, I think the vaccination plan, I think it makes sense. You go for the 500 or 600,000 frontliners first. Then you go for the people above 60 years old who are at greater risk of getting a bad attack of COVID. And then the rest of the population, I think it's fine. I think that's a way to approach it. As far as hiccups, I think it is the distribution chain. The cold chain I think, is quite a tough thing, the cold chain. And I'm not sure how they're going to handle that, because that is going to be a major issue. The other issue is, I think, there's a lot of vaccine hesitancy, I think, already in Malaysia, and so how we deal with talking about adverse events, I think is also important, because if we don't talk about it, openly, people will then be putting it out in their Facebook, in their WhatsApp, and scaring each other, I see. So I think it's important to handle it and to also work it out. If you don't mind, can I show my slide? I had a slide. Is it possible to share the slide that I had? I'm going to show you how perhaps we should. Okay, this is what came out from the UK. Yeah. That of the 6.9 million people vaccinated in the UK between December and January, they had 21 strokes in that cohort, 68 Bell's palsy, and 107 deaths. So, okay, next slide, please. If you look at the UK, this is the incidence, the baseline incidence of strokes is about 113,000 per year in a UK population of 6.5 1.65 million. So the stroke incidence per million per year is 1,006. And you bring it down to a 7-week period, it's about 228. Next slide. So if you look at this, what was observed in the vaccine patients is only 3 per million vaccinated, where what you'd expect in the population is about 2 to 8. So this is the kind of data you got to present to people. What is the adverse events noted, and is it far above the baseline, what you expect anyway without any vaccination, or is it below? Is it above? Is it above? Then you got to then look at the closer studies and see, is it really significantly higher? And then you can say, yeah, maybe the vaccine is causing this side effect. And this is the kind of thing that you've got to do to overcome one of the hiccups of people, like what Dr. Khor said earlier. People die every day. People get problems every day. And just because of the temporality, because it happened after the vaccine, to say the vaccine caused it, that is something we got, I think, explain to people and give this kind of data and clarify things. Thanks. I think I'll stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Jay Kumar. Just in addition to that, is there anything you'd like to respond to what Dr. Khor responded to you earlier? Any response to that?
Oh, okay. I mean, regarding antibody testing, it is available, I mean, even in Ipoh, we can go to the private lab. Ripples does it. They charge about $50 for the doctors to do it. It takes a day to come back. So people who are worrying about which vaccine to take, and people considering that, doing antibody tests and finding out, hey, I've already got COVID before and I got some antibodies, it may help you make a decision. So yeah, it is available. It's not being done by the government, open, but because, I mean, for the government to find cases which are active that you want to quarantine or you want to admit, you want active infection. So you look for the antigen or you look for the RNA. The antibody just shows that you have been exposed to the particular virus. And when it comes to talking about taking a vaccine to get immunity, if you already have immunity, that is a factor you got to think of. Do you want to take the vaccine and boost immunity, or you think with this immunity you got, it's okay for the time being? Yeah, I'll stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Jay Kumar. Dr. Khor, you wanted to mention something in response to Dr. Jay Kumar just now.
Yeah, thank you. Based on the slide that Dr. Kumar has shown earlier, right, I double-checked it just for my own understanding. And the people who receive the vaccines have fewer reduced number of stroke events, meaning if you receive the vaccine, you appear to have fewer stroke events. Now, I'm not saying that the vaccines are protecting you against strokes, but there could be other reasons for why the people right now in the UK are not getting strokes, perhaps less frequently than usual. So if you actually double check the data, it actually shows that in the vaccinated population, you're actually at less risk of stroke. Now, again, I'm not saying that the vaccine is protecting against strokes, because that is not realistic or logical or reasonable. But this is again to show that statistics, correlation, causality, coincidence, these are all very interesting statistical phenomena. May I respond to Suchong's question, if I may? Suchong's question is, firstly, how do you rate Malaysia's vaccination plan and timeline? Timeline, we're a little slow. I think we're country number 90-something around the world to vaccinate. So are we fast, are we slow? That really depends. How would I rate Malaysia's vaccination plan? I think the broad strokes of it are there, but the specifics are not there. For example, we don't yet know where the 605 vaccination centers are. We haven't seen yet the indemnity form or the approval form or the consent form that the government has said that they will ask people to be vaccinated to sign, and so on and so forth. So broadly speaking, I think we're there, but the details are very, very important. Are we okay in terms of speed? Right now, we're just starting off the vaccination program, Suchong. And at some point, if we get supplies, which I think is a crucial factor, if we get enough supplies, then I think we should be able to implement progressively quicker. But to get from, say, from 0 to 150,000 people per day, I think is very challenging. Suchong, the potential hiccups to Malaysia's vaccination plan implementation-wise, Dr. Kumar has mentioned about the cold chain. I agree to that as well. I'll also say the registration process, which requires a lot of digital technologies and electronic harmony, shall we say, and then also the actual delivery of the vaccination program. Whenever we have 150,000 people, there are bound to be one or two missed appointments, one or two wasted vials. There'll be a little bit of spillage and so on and so forth. So all that are the potential hiccups. And then thirdly and finally, does it matter which vaccine someone takes? No. Munirah, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khor. Okay, we do have quite a few questions from the floor here. I'm going to move on to some maybe simpler, more common questions that are being asked, by everyone really. I have a few questions, some from the floor and some that I've been seeing sort of being thrown around, people's concerns. So number one is, does one have immunity once you have COVID-19? Okay, that's one. Number two, for our culture, our community, who are very particular about our religious, restrictions. Some people are concerned: is this vaccine halal? And we do have people who are vegans. And can this vaccine be used for people who have a vegan diet? Maybe let's go with these two first. Dr. Jaya, would you like to answer any of those?
No, okay, the first one is a bit easier, and the second one is quite tough, I think. We would have to cope. Okay, regarding immunity, yeah, I think once you have an infection, you do get immunity. The question is, does it last, because there's some, for example, influenza, for example, immunity doesn't last you for a lifetime. You can get it again. So that's a question mark. And even after the vaccine, we got to follow up. We can do studies of the levels in the blood of the antibodies. We can also look at whether people do get the infection, after the vaccine. So we do not have the answer to that, And there have been some cases where people, there have been claims that people got COVID once, then after 6 months they got a second attack of COVID, and they say that the serotype, I mean the strain of COVID is different, So yeah, so that's one. So we still do not know. I think it's something it's a new disease. We got to keep looking at it and studying. Regarding the religious part, I really do not know. I know that the Catholic Church was a bit concerned whether the inactivated vaccines, how were they being grown? How were the viruses being grown? And their concern was whether the cell lines used to grow those viruses, whether they were taken from aborted fetuses, which for the Catholic Church, that is against their religion to take to support abortion and then use aborted fetuses. So I think people will have different religious groups will have different concerns, and different vaccines are different. I mean, like for example, the RNA vaccine. I mean, it's in a lab. It's not involving any animals, not involving any cell line. Maybe the question of where you produce the capsule from, So I don't know really, But anyway, it looks like as far as the RNA vaccine and the religious body, Islamic body in Malaysia, they've already said that that's all right. I think that's for each religious group to look into each vaccine and see how it's produced and get that data and make a decision.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jay Kumar. Dr. Khor, any response to either of those questions or both?
Excuse me. I like Dr. Kumar's response about antibodies. I think that's very true. To add on to that is to say that antibodies are generally going to reduce over time. And this has been proven through several immunological studies as well, just to show that the antibody levels will reduce over time, which explains Dr. Kumar's example of somebody who got COVID one time and then got reinfected. But reinfections are very rare. I think we've got maybe documented reinfections, something like 5 or 12 people out of the 112 million people who've had COVID so far, and all those who have recovered, frankly, so about 90 million of them, have had only about 5 or 12 of them having reinfections. Let me speak a little bit about the Islamic aspect. And I can speak a little bit about this because I do have a bit of conversations with some friends in Institute of Kefahaman Islam Malaysia in IKIM. And they have come up with a very good documents that explain why the vaccine is halal and they explore not only the production of the vaccine, the research process, the clinical trials process to make sure that it's ethical, and also the manufacturing process, and finally the delivery process as well. And they've tied all this to the Quran and so also the Hadith. Now, I'm certainly not an Islamic scholar, but I think if we go on to IKIM's website, we will be able to find some good documents that explore the halal nature of this vaccine. Now, halal certification, to my understanding, for medicines and vaccines is different from that of food and cosmetics. Now, although these are broadly the same thing because these are chemicals and material that we ingest into our bodies. So Malaysia does not yet have a system to certify that a particular vaccine is halal, but we can make pronouncements and fatwas if necessary to encourage or rather to educate people of the Muslim faith for them to know everything that they need to know from a religious perspective about the vaccine. Munirah, what a great question about veganism and vegans. I actually don't know. I know nothing about this particular subject, but how about this? I'm going to go read up about this and I'm going to go find out, and I'll try to tweet or put a Facebook post about this in the coming few days. Thank you, Munirah, over to you.
Thanks, Dr. Khor. I mean, it's good to know that, there's still lots of questions that, people are asking that it would be good to have answers to. But actually, can I share something? Because there is this compilation of information about the COVID-19 vaccine, which some family medicine specialists in Kedah came up with, and I thought was really good because it basically addressed nearly everything anybody would want to know about this vaccine. I'm going to try and share my screen here.
It's a group of family physicians from Kedah, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
so,
great.
Hang on. Can you see this? All right. Okay. So basically, I mean, it's in Malay, but it basically explains what is in the vaccine, which is the mRNA. It's got the lipids, the salts, and the sugar. And obviously, you can look into the functions and of these specific ingredients. And then the next part, it talks about the fact that this vaccine does not have any of these things. Pengawet, which is preservatives, egg, latex, any animal cells, especially from pigs or from cows. There are no blood cells or no fetal cells. There's no aluminium, there's no formaldehyde, no mercury, and no thimerosal. I think that's how you pronounce that. And then there's this this particular diagram, which was done by the South Asian COVID Task Force, which shows that there's no pork-derived materials, and that its lipid and cholesterol are plant-based or synthetic, so not animal-based. There's no fetal cell products, no blood fractions, and prescribed as permissible or recommended by the Vegan Society, Muslim and Jewish councils in the United States of America. So I thought this was very helpful to me, and hopefully to other people who are really particular. And this is very understandable because our society is very strong in our religious, in our faiths, in our beliefs, and it should be respected as such. So now let's stop that. Right. So we do have some more questions from the floor, probably to do with people who have medical conditions. Okay, so a question from Yo and Kian, senior citizens who are in the range of 65 to 80-year-olds with comorbidities, stroke, high blood pressure, diabetes, gout, scleroderma. Are they a suitable population to take the vaccine? There's also another question from Lai Yi Wong. If somebody has had a strong allergic reaction, like bad mouth ulcers and Bell's palsy that needed high dose steroids, to other medications, should they be able to take the Pfizer vaccination? And a very popular question, which very much more to the female population, is what about breastfeeding and pregnant mothers? So maybe this time, Dr. Khor, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Munirah. I will begin by saying that you should speak, all of you, with those great questions. Really should speak with your doctor. And this is not a substitute for medical advice. This is a webinar to talk about the COVID vaccines. And this is not a, shall we say, a therapeutic relationship. So really speak to your doctors. I will provide some, say, brief principles, if I may, just to guide the answer to the question. Firstly, every situation differs. So for Mr. Yeo Eng Kian, who's mentioned about the senior citizen who's 65 to 80, that is different from the person Lai Yi Wong's example of bad mouth ulcers and Bell's palsy, which is very different from the person with who's breastfeeding or lactating to use a technical term. So the point I'm making is every situation is different, and because every situation is different, we really have to ask more information, such as other variables we need to consider. So for the senior citizen with stroke, high blood pressure, diabetes, gout, and so on and so forth, does the benefit outweigh the risk of taking the vaccine? And that is generally the principle. For people with comorbidities, we think that there is a higher possibility of you getting COVID, and if you get COVID, to get severe COVID. Therefore, on balance, they themselves are not contraindications. The word contraindication is a big word. What it means is you're not allowed to take the vaccine. So just because you have diabetes doesn't mean that you're not allowed to take the vaccine automatically. For example, my mother has got diabetes and high blood pressure, and she's already signed up for the vaccine because, broadly speaking, she's in a high risk category. Also, she's a former cancer survivor. Also, she's more than 65. So when you put all these things together, she's in a high risk, and the vaccine could protect. For the one with secondly, if I can move on to the one with the allergic reaction, I think this is more difficult to decide. And this is definitely something for you and your doctor to discuss as well. But I will provide some information to you, right? I mean, your doctor will ask you a bunch of other questions. Let me provide some information from the vaccination program. You register firstly on MySejahtera, where you'll be asked to tick whether or not you have had previous allergies. That's how you disclose the challenge, so that we're aware of it. The doctors are aware of it. Secondly, just because you've registered doesn't mean that you automatically receive the vaccine immediately. You still have to, for example, go to the vaccination site, see a doctor who asks you a lot of questions and do some physical checks for you, maybe some blood tests to determine if you're fit to get the vaccine. And let's assume, thirdly, that the doctor agrees and you agree, you know what, on balance, you should take the vaccine. And you come to the vaccination site and you will be receiving the vaccine, and you'll be observed for 30 minutes with full facilities for the vaccination as well. So in case anything goes wrong, we will be able to support you very quickly. So even with allergies, there are multiple steps along the way to ensure that we find out a lot more about you, and that we're making sure that you're going to be okay. Thirdly and finally, I talk about breastfeeding and vaccines. Now, this one, I want to be very careful because the evidence continues to evolve. And I must inform that at the moment, the Malaysian government position is to be more cautious. The international consensus, if I can use the word consensus, is that pregnancy and breastfeeding are not contraindications. Sorry, it's that big word again. So just because you're pregnant or just because you're lactating does not mean that you should be automatically stopped from getting the vaccine. That's the international consensus. The international consensus does not say we will vaccinate every pregnant and breastfeeding woman. No. The international consensus says just because you're pregnant or not breastfeeding does not mean you shouldn't receive the vaccine. In Malaysia, we're even more cautious. At the moment, we're saying we're not going to vaccinate anybody who is pregnant and breastfeeding. These are two implications, two reasons. The first one is, one reason and one implication. The reason is we don't have enough supplies yet, and we do want to be extra careful as we get more data. And I think this caution is good. Secondly, in practical terms, there is a duty for every adult out there who does not have a contraindication. You don't have allergies and you don't have any medical problems and you're not pregnant or breastfeeding. You have a duty, we have a duty to vaccinate ourselves, because people below the age of 18 can't vaccinate right now because there's not enough data. People who are pregnant can't vaccinate because there's also not enough data, and we're being cautious. If you have severe allergic reactions in the past, then you also can't vaccinate because you've got severe allergic reactions. You keep adding people into the population who cannot get vaccinated, pretty soon you're left with 70% of the population. Because those below the age of 18 years old in Malaysia, 29% of Malaysia's population. Repeat, 29% of Malaysians are below the age of 18. You cannot vaccinate them today. If the data changes, the data will change and we'll make a new decision. This means that we must vaccinate maybe the entire 71% of the population just to achieve herd immunity. The point I'm making is, Munirah, just to answer this question, which are great questions, the implication for people who have these questions, the implication for people who don't have these questions or don't have these problems is that if you vaccinate, you're not only protecting yourself, but you're doing your duty to protect the others around you. Munirah, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khor, explaining the concept of herd immunity and how important it is for the people, the general population who don't fall into those categories to actually immunize themselves. Yes, Dr. Jay Kumar, do you have anything to add to what Dr. Khor has shared just now?
No, I think Dr. Khor handled those issues quite well. I just want to say that the vaccine is important. I think for Malaysia, looking at the whole overall thing, COVID has forced us to close down. And when we close down, something like 20% of our families have had a serious drop in their income and they're struggling. And to overcome this whole thing, to lift the PKP and to go back to more normalcy and let people earn a living, we've got to overcome COVID. And for that, we need this herd immunity, we need the vaccine program. So I think people should try, and go along with the program, ask the right questions. And I think the government and authorities should be honest, give as much data as we can. And but I think we need the vaccine. I mean, I'm not saying don't take the vaccine. We need the vaccine, and the faster we get it, the sooner we can open up. And because a lot of families are suffering, many people are, they're about maybe 15%, 20% of families where the income has dropped to more than 50% of what they used to be, and they're really struggling to get by. So I think the sooner we can get vaccinated and get the immunity up, and we can open up the economy. So it's not only a health issue, it's also an economic issue. So I think we should all try to make this program succeed.
Thank you, Dr. Jagur. I think that's a really good point because, while we are focusing on the effects of health, of the COVID vaccine on health or to prevent health implications, the economy is definitely a big, where we have seen being hit the most in terms of a lot of people who have affected its livelihood, their livelihood. And therefore, hopefully this COVID vaccine will let us get back to as near normal a life as possible and get back to earning our livelihoods and making ends meet. Right, I have a few questions from the floor, a little bit scientific and technical. I'm going to give one to Dr. Jay Kumar and one to Dr. Khor, but obviously you can fill in as well. So Dr. Jay Kumar, from Chan Yit Fei, to what extent should we be concerned about the non-specific delivery of the mRNA vaccine once it's inoculated into our body, especially the possibility of cell-mediated immune response towards non-generative cells like muscle cells and nerve cells? Should these cells pick up the mRNA and present the viral protein as a result? So very technical question. Hopefully you can reply that in a maybe lay language that everybody can understand what Chan Yit-Fei is asking and also the reply to that. And Dr. Khor from Lau Chai Hun, can't our body immune system pick up the COVID-19 infection and produce more antibodies on the subsequent infection instead of going for the vaccination? So meaning that allow our body to produce a natural response and protect ourselves, the natural immunity rather than from the vaccine. Okay, Dr. Jay Kumar, would you like to go first?
Okay. Yitfei, regarding the vaccine going and affecting other cells, that was a worry. But see, the vaccine is actually given as intramuscular injection. I would guess a lot of it will go into the muscle in that area. There was a bit of worry that it will go and be taken up by other cells, and then those cells get attacked by the immune system, the cell-mediated immunity. But you look at the data emerging, there's so many, few million vaccines been given already. Both the RNA as well as the adenovirus. Like I just showed earlier, the incidence of, say, Bell's palsy, for example, is not above baseline. It is below the baseline. So it doesn't seem to be a major problem that the vaccine in the acute phase is taken up by certain cells and the cells are attacked, and that causes a health problem. The data now, it's got a few million doses been given out. The data doesn't show that. Okay, so that doesn't seem to be a big issue. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jay Kumar. Dr. Khor?
Thank you. The question from Lau Chai Hun is about body's immune system picking up the COVID infection and causing antibodies. Chai Hun, the short answer is science doesn't know yet. because this is actually quite rare. Like I mentioned, only about 5 or 12 cases of reinfection have taken place. But as more and more people get COVID and recover from COVID, there is a possibility that the number of reinfections will go higher. And as the numbers increase, we'll continue to study, and then we'll give you the information when we have it. That's what the evidence tells us at the moment, Chai-Hun. But I can share some theoretical principles. The theoretical principles which are quite reliable are as follows. Firstly, let's just say you had the COVID infection in March 2020. 1 year ago, you had the COVID infection. Your antibodies will remain high for several months, but then they'll drop. How quickly they'll drop depends on any number of factors, your age, your gender, your other, whether or not you have other diseases, the severity of the infection in the first place, the strength of your immune system, and so on. So from, let's just say you had the infection in March 2020, at some point, the antibodies will drop. And it could be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, we don't know. We don't know because we don't do enough population antibody tests. What I mean to say is we don't test the COVID survivors in Malaysia for antibodies very, very regularly. So we don't know. But at some point, the numbers of antibody will drop. And for example, you had the infection in March 2020. At some point, it's going to drop down to 0. Let's say it's 1 year from then. Then in March 2021, you then become exposed again, the same risk of getting COVID like somebody else. Again, it could be 1 year, it could be 2 years. So frankly, we don't know. But based on general evidence for the flu viruses, the immunity period is usually about 6 to 12, 6 to 18 months or so, and it doesn't last much longer beyond that. Sharon, that's the theoretical answer to your question, and the practical answer is we don't know yet. Munirah, over.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Khor. There is actually another question which may be sort of along the line, so I'm just going to throw this back at you if that's all right. Who is asking the question? Sorry, I've lost the person who's asking the question, but basically, it's Chan Yi Fei. Sorry about that. He or she is asking whether the comparison between COVID-19 and the common cold, which is also caused by coronavirus, and what are the, in terms of the comparison in terms of risk benefits analysis?
Is that to me, Munirah?
Yes. Sorry, I was just I thought that
sure.
was along the same lines.
Of course, no problems. Hello, Yifei, thank you for your question. When you say risk-benefit analysis, there could be several ways that you can consider what is a risk-benefit analysis. So the first one could be risk-benefit analysis of how likely you are to get the COVID-19 or just coronaviruses, because in coronavirus, we've got 4 families of the coronavirus. We've got alpha, beta, gamma, for example, and coronavirus is beta. So do you mean risk-benefit analysis in terms of how likely you are to get it and how severe the symptoms are and so on? Or risk-benefit analysis in terms of the treatment, or risk-benefit analysis in terms of vaccination, for example? So there are 3 separate, say, risk-benefit analysis that one can conduct. Again, I'm not a virologist, also not a pulmonary physician. My training is more general medicine, then public health, and then public policy. So I'll provide a bit of a superficial answer over here. Firstly, is to say that in general terms, COVID is more lethal. COVID-19 rather is more lethal because it may kill more people as a percentage term compared to the common cold. Although secondly, the common cold appears to spread more widely, it also appears to be concentrated during the northern and southern hemisphere winter periods, whereas COVID, although it appears to spread less widely compared to the common cold, it does have spread quite widely around the world because it doesn't really seem to have any weather or climate, doesn't seem to have any impact on the COVID-19 virus. So that's a bit of a cost-benefit analysis, risk-benefit analysis in terms of the pathophysiology of it. In terms of the vaccines, I really am not placed to answer because we have good experience with the flu vaccine, and every year we will have to update the flu vaccine. These are called seasonal variations, in the genome, for example, of the flu vaccine. So we do that quite frequently, and there's a process to do it. Whereas COVID, we don't have a good amount of experience with the COVID vaccine. So in terms of the risk-benefit analysis, I think we're still figuring that one out as well. Munirah, thank you. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Dr. Khor. Okay, last question. I know there are some questions that we haven't managed to answer, but last question for Dr. Jay Kumar. Lai Yi Wong is asking, will the government allow vaccines to be available in private hospitals for paying patients? The same policy could still be adhered to, frontliners first and so on. Do we know anything about this?
Okay, actually, I'm in a private hospital, and we have already been asked to register ourselves. Not only us, our clinic staff, the nurses, they're all considered frontliners as well. And we've been asked to register ourselves for the Pfizer vaccine. So that is definitely available. I think you're asking whether when the other vaccines come on the market, whether the government will allow private hospitals to take them on and maybe sell them or whatever. I think it's possible, but I think what we need to do is we need to have a vaccine database. We got to know how many people are being vaccinated, and then we got to follow up in terms of the side effects and all that. So this is actually government policy. I would think it will make sense to kind of open it up so people who don't take the RNA vaccine are free to go and pay and take something else if they feel comfortable with that. The important thing is to get vaccinated. So I think it makes sense to, but I can't talk for the government, can I?
Okay, so I guess what you're saying is not at this point in time, but hopefully at some point in the future when we have enough vaccines to be able to roll them out that way. Okay, so there are actually several other questions from our Facebook page, which actually we don't have time for tonight. Unfortunately, it's good to see everyone asking so many questions, but maybe Dr. Jay Kumar and Dr. Khor, if you have time to have a look at those questions on Facebook, maybe you could reply there, which would be very beneficial for our viewers and other people as well. Okay, so I think in terms of looking at the population and what people think about this vaccine, I think we can generalize the population into three categories. One are the people who are pro-vaccine. We're getting vaccine, no issues, no concerns. We understand it's needed. We're going for it. And then the other end of the spectrum are the anti-vaccination group who are not going for this vaccine due to many reasons, some conspiracy theories and lots of other reasons. But I think a lot of people also fall into the middle group, which is people who are hesitant to vaccinate, not necessarily anti-vaccination, and are a little bit hesitant to say, yes, I'm going to vaccinate. And hopefully our discussion tonight has helped those people, especially in the middle, who are thinking, should I not, should I not? Sort of maybe understand the concepts, but need to grasp that little bit more. So before we end tonight, which has been a really inspiring talk and very informative for me at least, and hopefully for everybody else who's hearing, I'd like to invite our speakers to maybe summarize your thoughts and your final points to our audience. Dr. Jay Kumar, you first.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Munirah. I think I won't summarize, but I just want to bring up one more point, is that for this whole COVID thing, I think solidarity has been the defining thing, that we pull together, we support the people who have financial problems, and that is what has pulled, any country that has gone through this COVID thing, that is what has pulled us through. So similarly, we need the vaccine, we do the vaccine, and if by chance there are the side effects that are bad, that are not anticipated, and there are, we should as a society be responsible and be supportive. So I think that's the guarantee. I think the government's already come out saying that there'll be a scheme to compensate if there are, and I think that's a good idea. I think, though the drug companies are saying that there's indemnity clause, I think government should say we as a society need the vaccine. We need this vaccine to control the COVID epidemic so that it can open up and people can go back to have a normal life. And so you taking the vaccine is for yourself, but it's also for your family, it's also for your community, it's also for the country. So just there would be some people, some unlucky ones, for some reason may get side effects. So it shouldn't be that person's kind of responsibility. We as a society should step in and make sure that if there are any such things, and hopefully there'll be only a small number, we should make sure that they get all the care that they need and they don't have to pay for it. And if they need support for a longer period, that should be given. I mean, even a good vaccine, like say for measles, for example, I mean, measles is really saved a lot of lives, but still, measles causes some kind of encephalitis in a small number, right? It does happen. So I think we should just be compassionate and also practice the whole spirit of solidarity that has got us through this COVID thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jay Kumar, for that. Dr. Khor, over to you. Your final words for us.
Thank you. Maybe I'll take a short second to say to Dr. Kumar, I agree with his points about the indemnity program, the vaccine liability program. In Malaysia, vaccine liability or medical liability for products, meaning drugs that you take and vaccines that you're injected with, there is no one law in Malaysia that governs product liability. Instead, we're left with a patchwork of civil and criminal law. And I've written about this, and if you Google vaccine liability in Malaysia and perhaps my name, you will be able to see an article that I wrote with a pharmacist and a lawyer that looks at the existing liability landscape in Malaysia. It is not strong enough. And we certainly have to demonstrate a lot of solidarity and protect those who can't protect themselves. So in this respect, I'm absolutely supportive of what Dr. Kumar has mentioned. I think this webinar has been the first webinar that I've had, right, where we've addressed some issues more full-frontally. Usually we're talking to people who understand the theoretical concepts, which I think are great. But right now, today, Munirah and everyone else, the first vaccines have already been given to the Prime Minister and to DG Hisham and so on. And we are now not theoretical. We must now make very practical decisions about the vaccine. Should we register? Should we take it? And the answer is yes, you should register and yes, you should take it. For the reasons that I've already explained earlier, it's safe, it's effective, but let me give 3 more reasons and I'll end there. Not only is the vaccine safe in the short term, and we hope that the vaccine will be safe in the long term, the vaccine is effective in clinical trials and in real life. But I'll also give 3 more reasons. So we'll end with 5 dalil kenapa nak ambil vaksin, ataupun 5 sebab kenapa nak ambil vaksin. 5 reasons to take the vaccine. It's safe, it's effective, it will protect you. It will protect your family and those you love, especially those who can't take the vaccine because they are less than the age of 18 or they're pregnant at the moment or they have severe contraindications like severe allergies. So it's safe, it's effective, it will protect you, it will protect your family and those you love, and finally, it will help Malaysia. It will help Malaysia get into some form of normality for us to restart our society, for children to go to school again, for us to visit our parents during festivals, and for us to go shopping, and for our economy to start growing again. Malaysia, we can't be left behind, I guess, in the recovery process for the pandemic. I think this vaccine is one piece of the jigsaw puzzle, and I would be very happy to take it when it's my turn to take it. Munirah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khor. I think it's been a really interesting discussion tonight. I think it's fair to say that we are all actually on the same page with regards to the vaccination, that we feel that, everyone should get vaccinated, especially those with, who are less prone to side effects and negative effects of the vaccine. And that, Dr. Jay Kumar, I really like the way you said that, this is the least we can do in solidarity with getting through this pandemic, which we have, I think, done so well as a nation to try and, manage this as a society since last year till now. And this would be the next step. And for those who are not aware and keen to have your COVID vaccination, you need to update your MySejahtera app. And then there will be a section for COVID vaccination where you can update your registration details and then wait for further information for when you can get your vaccine. So I've registered for mine, and hopefully everyone will do so too. And I really hope, we from Project Wawasan Rakyat really hope that tonight has been informative for everyone, has helped to dispel some myths, have helped to understand some of the dilemmas and some of the concerns that that everybody has, but hopefully that makes you and allows you to make an informed decision about the COVID vaccination. And let's hope, as a one nation, Malaysia, that we can overcome this together. All right, thank you very much. And thank you to all our viewers tonight and for all the questions coming from the floor. Thank you very much to our speakers, Dr. Khor and Dr. Jeyakumar. It's lovely to have you here with us tonight. And Nat, anything else from you before we close the floor?
Thanks very much, Dr. Munirah. Just very quickly, so thanks a lot to everyone. And again, Project Wawasan Rakyat, and what we do is like try and distill conversations in which people are only shouting at extremes and trying to bring it closer to the center to have more reasonable, fact-based, and discussion in which we can build common ground on. So I think tonight has been an excellent example on that. Great credit to you, Dr. Munirah, for moderating. We really appreciate it. Won't go on very long. So thank you very much again, everyone, to all doctors, and see you guys out there. Stay safe. Thanks very much. Take care.
Have a good evening, everyone.